How many of you would like to see this demo I've got on? Okay, I'm
Yes.
ready to go. I'm just going to switch my camera here and we will get going. We'll do a little video and then we'll come back and wrap it up. All right. Can you see my modified LK140?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So I have an LK140. I've taken it apart and took the middle section out. And I really love this because it's small enough. I think I might be able to fit it in a suitcase if I wanted to. And it's great for demonstrating and videos and things like that. So I've taken the carriage off my machine. There we go. Just because if you're going to change your sponge bar, you need to do that. Take your carriage off. And I'm going to take off my row counter. Won't need that. I'm taking off the little holders on the side. Sorry, let me take the mast off first. So the mast, we don't need that. That comes off. And these little yarn holders at the back, we're going to take those off as well, because I want to actually turn the machine over to change out the sponge bar. And the last thing I'm going to take off are the clamps. And I'm just down here underneath, loosening them up. See, there's the clamp. On my machine, I only have 2 of these. The third clamp was in the middle section. That's come out. I don't need that anymore. So I've got 2 clamps. And then I can turn this over. I use these little rubber sheets under my machine. I just find that they work really well for using the clamps, and the machine doesn't tend to move then. But sometimes we need to ask ourselves, like, if our machine's not working well, why not? What's wrong with it? And sometimes if you need to replace your sponge bar, and the sponge bar is this black section that's running along here, you'll know because your knitting will you'll have problems knitting. One way that I know that I need to change my sponge bar is that when I put my machine up like this, my needles will slide down on their own. It turns out that it wasn't that long ago that I changed the sponge bar on here. This one is actually really good. It doesn't need to be changed. But if you ever are packing up your machine and you lift it up and you notice that your needles are sliding down on their own, that's a really good sign that that sponge bar underneath is completely worn out. Sometimes too, you might get a machine that you find at a sale or something, you bring it home, and the sponge at the back, if it's old, over time, these deteriorate. You just can't help it. It's just, they dry out in our weather, and these needles need to be supported by a nice fat piece of sponge, or you just won't be able to knit well at all. So I want to open it up and invite questions. If anybody has any, just use the raise hand feature or speak up. I'd be happy to address any questions as we go along. So that's one way. If your needles start to slide, maybe you might often see tension issues too in parts of your bed where you use it a lot. Like, I'm always kind of working from 0 out to about 30 or 40 for swatching. And I find that if I am going to need to replace my sponge bar, it's generally in that section where I'm doing a lot of swatching. So let's talk about how to take out the sponge bar. The very first thing you have to do is you have to remove the knitting needles in this model. You can't do it without that. And the way that you need to do that is to push your needles forward. And I use this handy little credit card that's been cut because you need to close the latches. So all the latches on the needles need to be closed in order to get them out. Once they're closed, and I might just put this camera down a little to get a little bit closer so that you can see. Once the latches are closed, they're easy to take out. You can take 2 or 3 at a time, pull them back, and as you're pulling them back, you're going to lift up. See that? They just slide right out. I'm going to do it with my other hand here so that you can see it maybe a little better. We just take the needles. Sometimes I'll even just pull them with my finger to make sure that those latches are closed. And then as I'm sliding them back, I'm lifting them up. Slide back, lift up and out. I'll try it with this hand again so you can see better. Okay, I'm grabbing 3 needles, pulling slightly on them and lifting them up. So that's all there is to it. Once those latches are closed, they come out lickety-split. If the latches are open, you're going to have a problem. They're not going to come out. But this is all that you do. Just run along your bed, closing all the latches with your tool, and then lifting and pulling out. Any questions so far?
That's a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah? Good, yeah. And, I think this is a good thing to do, even if you're not changing your sponge bar. I think it's a really good thing to take these needles out every so often and just clean your bed. I can't tell you how much fluff and stuff I found in the bed, just sort of dust. From a maintenance perspective, I would say too, when your machine's not in use, cover it up. I do that with my other machine. I have a Singer as well now, and I keep it covered because I just don't use it as much as I use my LK 150. And it's got I have a beautiful piece of Japanese fabric that I collected, but I've never used. So it's become my dust cover, and it's gorgeous. It looks better covered up than it does in uncovered. But I feel that having a little bit of protection over top of your machine, keeping the dust out, does a lot to keeping it working well. So I'm almost.
Barb, if you were just taking the needles out and cleaning them and
Yep.
the bed, can you put the needles back without going to the back?
Absolutely. So
you can put them back just laying on the bed there?
Yep. So I'll show you.
I have one out and I can't get it back in. So
I've got all the needles out now.
Yeah.
Just come back up here. So all the needles are out, and I'll show you how to put them back in. Bring my camera back down. So the procedure is opposite. So we have the latches closed. To put the needles back in, the latches have to be open. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the needle in. Sorry, guys. Can you see that?
Yeah.
I put the needle in, and when I get right down to about here, I can feel. I'm going to put my hand underneath the machine because your needle needs to go in under the sponge at the back, and then it pops up again. So now I'm almost vertical with the bed. When you put your needle in, you're going to slide it in, latches open, And when you get about here, you need to push it down at the back because it's almost vertical to the bed, and then it pops in. And I'm just going to show you on the other side what's happening. So here's my sponge bar. You see here? This is the needle. So the needle comes underneath the sponge bar and then back into the slot again and out the front. Very slick. But I do need to take these out because I want to show you the next, oops, and I have to close the latches to get them out. I'll show you the next step in getting the sponge bar out. So now I'm flipping the machine over, and there's one more step. I have to, with a screwdriver, take out this metal brace. I'll do it on this side so you can see it better. This is a metal bracket that's holding, I think that this bracket also plays a role in magnetizing the needles a bit with the carriage. I could be wrong, but I think I saw that in a video somewhere. That this metal sort of works with the magnets that are in the carriage in here, underneath here. See, there's magnets here. And so when the carriage runs across, that's how come the needles will open and close. And that's another thing about your needles. When you've got them all taken out of your machine, you want to have a look at them, because if any of them are broken or bent, and I'll show you, I've got a few of those that I've got, that can really cause problems with your knitting as well. So I've got these 4 screws removed. This little plate's going to come out. And now I have to take the other one out as well. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to lift this up. Can you see my sponge bar has kind of all these ridges in it? Along here, these can really get worn over time. But once you've got this metal bracket out, then you can, and I just take my little transfer tool like this, you can just wedge it at the side, and the sponge you can just peel right off. So mine's still fairly new. This adhesive is quite good, but you can see here that it's got a few kind of divots in it. On the underside, it's a little chewed up. Sometimes when I was, taking my needles out and in, if some of those needles are not closed, you can see how it can chew up your sponge bar. So you're just going to pull along like, oh, there we go. This one just ripped. So now I'm going to just take off this second plate. Just take a minute or two. Any questions while I'm using my handy screwdriver?
Is it easy to get sponge bars?
It is easy to get sponge bars. We just placed an order with the yarn guy in Toronto and ordered some in. And I think I have one left in the shop. I think that they're not expensive. They're $15, which is probably more than just buying foam. But you have to find the right size. Every machine is different too. So I just buy them from the yarn guy in Toronto, and they come measured right to the size of the LK150 bed.
Barb, didn't you have some in the shop a few months ago?
Yeah, Yeah, and I think I have one. I think I have one sponge bar left for the LK 150. If you want one, Adele, I'd be happy to sell that to you.
I think I bought a couple when you first got them in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just showing you over here, you guys, I just put my little transfer tool in there and pulled up the sponge, and it's coming up quite nicely from the other side. See? And yeah, and this sponge bar, you see it's starting to disintegrate a little bit. You can see the sticky adhesive on the back side. But here you can see where all my needles were. And this one actually looks good. I've seen some that are completely flattened out.
Yeah.
You know, but once that's out, then you're going to take your new sponge bar. I actually have two pieces here because I had to cut mine because I took 50 stitches out. My sponge bar was too long, so I just trimmed it. And you're just going to insert this in here. I like to do it with the adhesive still on the sponge bar until I get it all nice in there and figure out. You're going to have extra sponge on the side that's not impacted by any needles. So this doesn't have to be quite this long, but you're still moving your carriage back over it. So I like it to go right to the end on each side. And once I have it fit in there nicely, then I'll take the adhesive off and stick it right down. And then I go and put my needles back in. So I'm just going to flip this over for now and just show you how to put the needles back in without putting my plates on, because that takes a little bit of time. But here I have a needle and I'm going to have the latch open. And just going to hold my hand at the back. Oh, my sponge bar fell right out. Yeah, that's not going to work. You do have to actually physically put that down first. But what I wanted to show you is that the needle, when you're putting it in, rests on this side of the sponge bar. So that sponge bar is sandwiched between your needle, and that's what keeps it nice and firm, and it keeps your needles from moving around on your bed. I don't want to take a lot of time to put all the needles back in to show you, but I do want to show you what happens when you have needles that are these needles here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this one is crooked. The little latch on the top is actually bent over to the right. And so if you have a needle like this with the latch bent, in fact, it's really stiff.
Barb, maybe just hold it down a little bit more. Yeah, the camera isn't focusing on it, so it's just a bit blurry, but that, I think there's better, or we can try and adjust the focus by turning the little knob under the camera. So hold it a little bit closer with your left hand, yeah, and just, I think that's a little better, yeah.
Okay. This latch is actually not lining up anymore. It's pushed over to the right. And here's another needle where this latch should go down to the bottom nice and smooth, but it's stuck. It's really sticky here. And so it doesn't want to move and it doesn't want to close completely. Same with this one. This needle should move really easily and go down. This one is very tight and hard to
Just
get
bring
up.
your hands down a little bit. There we go, Barb. Perfect.
Sorry. Yeah, so I have to push this quite hard to get it to go down. It should be much easier than this. And it could be that there's maybe some oil, maybe from, me oiling my machine, or dirt, or so what I like to do with these needles is I soak them in a cup of boiling water and a little bit of detergent, just, soak from the sink, dishwashing detergent, and just kind of soak them in. If they come back, not the bent ones, but if the ones that are really sticky are easy to move, I'll reuse them. This one, it isn't, and it's been sitting in here quite a while. So I'm just going to throw this one out. I think, needles, you can buy new needles too. And rather than put that back in my bed and worry about, knitting a swatch and having it with wonky stitches, just rather replace it with a brand new needle. So what do you guys think about that? Fairly easy?
I don't think I'm afraid to do it anymore. I was just really anxious about having to do it, and I've had mine now for a year and a couple of months. It's probably time.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking when I was taking all the needles out too, was don't be afraid, Barbara, you can do this. Like it's true. It can be a little, you can kind of have a little heart palpitation, but it was really easy. I took them all out this morning, put them all back in, and everything just went fine. So it's just something where you need to take your time and step by step, and you can do it.
Thank you so much for showing us.
Yeah. This is one thing that's not in our manual, how to change the sponge bar. So I thought it would be a good thing to show. And the other thing that I would recommend too, when you've got your machine apart like this, is to give it a good cleaning. So I like to, I take my vacuum out actually, and I try and suck everything out of there that I can. And then I have this little tool that I love. This was from a sewing machine that I have. It's just a little wire brush. I'm sure you can find these at the dollar store. And I just like to take it and just run it along my bed and just get out as much dust and dirt as I can in here. When I was doing this the first time this morning as a practice, I actually caught some sponge with my needles when I was putting them back in. So little pieces of sponge, dirt, hair, fiber, when you're knitting with mohair, which I do quite a bit, you can get a lot of fluff in your knitting machine. So keeping it clean, I think, is important. I also have a little thing of oil that I got here from the yarn guy. And this is nice because it's in a little bottle. This actually has a little straw that you can push in there, and then you can spray it into the runner along your machine where your carriage runs back and forth. And I like to spray this in and then take a paper towel and rub as much off as I can, because I don't like to get too much oil on my machine. I feel like it transfers over to fiber quite easily. And I also feel that sometimes maybe the needles can get a little gummy if you use too much. So a little goes a long way. And I think that's it for advice. Just have one of these. This is really key. This was an old some sort of credit card that I just cut apart. These are great for making sure that the latches are open and closed. Okay.
One thing too is to use canned air.
Yes.
After you use your brush, maybe that using canned air might be an assist as well.
Right. Yeah. to get rid of something that might have been lodged in there that you couldn't get with the vacuum. It's a great idea. All right. With that, I say adieu. Best of luck. Happy machine knitting, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.